Alright, today we're going to be working on the LatchPlate drawing. Now for the LatchPlate drawing, there's a couple important things to note. Mainly that it doesn't give you all the information you need to complete the drawing. We don't know how wide this line to this line is, so we have to infer it from a couple dimensions, namely the 3-inch dimension and this 0.56 radius dimension. That's really the only trick they play on you in this drawing. So let's get started. Please note that I'm hopping back and forth in workspaces in Ubuntu. Don't let that fool you. I'm just trying to make it easy to switch back and forth between the drawing and the PDF as we're going through this. So one thing to note about this drawing is that it's a mirror image of itself. So we only have to draw half the drawing to get all of the information that we need. So to do that, I'm going to start by using the infinite line option and draw two infinite lines, a horizontal line and a vertical line. And to keep track of my lines, I'm going to make my horizontal infinite line, my mirror line, cyan. Then next, I'm going to take my vertical line and offset it by the full width of the latch plate, which is 6.3 inches. So to do this, I'm going to type O into the command line down here, hit enter, and notice that it defaults to 1 inch for the distance of the offset. I'm going to type in 6.3 because that's the offset that I want to use, hit enter, and it's going to ask me for my source entity. The source entity is just saying, what line do you want to offset? So I'm going to tell it which line I want to offset, my vertical infinite line, and then it's going to ask me to specify side for destination. Now I have some couple options here, but for this one I'm just going to click to the left because I just want to move 6.3 inches to the left. Next I'm going to hit escape, and let's hop back over to the drawing for our next dimension. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw these two circles here because they're the next most important thing in the drawing. So what I'll do is I'll offset the mirror line, the cyan line that I drew, 1.5 inches, and then offset, enter. And notice down here that it says 6.3 in default now. That's because anytime you use the offset command, it's going to default to the last used number. So I'm going to type 1.5 and then offset my mirror line up, hit escape, and then let's go back and check our drawing real quick. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to offset this side line here, the one that we moved 6.3 over to the left, 0.56, or the radius of this fillet, so we'll have the center point of this first circle. And then the second circle is 3.5 over to the right. So I'm going to type O for offset, and then type 0.56 for my first circle. Specify my entity, the side I want to offset, and then hit escape and hit enter to bring the command back up again, and 3.5 this time to get my second center line. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my circles in. I can get to the circle command by hitting the icon over to the left, or typing C, or I can even pull it down from the draw menu down here, and here it gives me lots of different options. At this time I want center radius, which is the default option, so we'll go ahead and click that, pick the center line of my circle, and then in the command line down here, notice that it's asking me to specify a radius and not a diameter. I know the radius and the diameter. The diameter of the circles is 0.5, and a radius of 0.5 is pretty easy. It's 0.25. But in this case, let's go ahead and type a D, and now it's going to ask need to specify the diameter. So I'll type 0.5. And now I have a 0.5 inch circle. Now to get this circle over here, we can do a couple things. We can start the circle command over again, or we can copy it. So in the command line, I'm going to type copy, or you can also type CP to save time. It'll ask me to specify the entity, so I'm going to click my circle, and then I'm going to hit enter, and it's asking me for my from point. So for this, I want to use my center point. So I'll click the center point here, and then snap the circle there, hit escape, and now I have my circles. So the next thing I'll do is get the top line of the latch plate. So I'll start the offset command, and again I can type O here, or I can also get it from the modify menu. Click offset here, or if you like the icons, the offset command is here too. So click that, and it's going to ask me to specify the distance again, so I'm going to type 0.56 to get my top line, enter, and now we have our top lines. So now the drawing is starting to get a little bit confusing. We've got lots of cross lines, lots of stuff going on. So let's go ahead and get rid of a couple of these lines. We know we don't need these center lines anymore, so I'm going to highlight them and hit the delete key to get rid of them. And I don't need this line anymore either, so same thing for it. And then for these two lines, we've got this cyan line here, which shouldn't really be cyan anymore. And for some reason my circles are cyan. Cyan is still selected up here. So let's go back up to by block and leave this here. And then we're going to highlight these two lines. And notice this went back to cyan. So for these, we'll click by layer. And then since we're on layer 0, and layer 0 is white, they changed back to white. Now I need to do a fillet on the back end of this. So we'll go into the modify menu, click fillet, and it's going to give me a couple options down here. And notice that the radius is currently set to 0. So let's type R, and we'll give it a radius of 0.56, because that's what the radius of this fillet is. And it's going to ask me for my first entity and my second entity. So let's see what clicking on the outside of the lines does. So click here, click here. The lines that we care about are gone. So let's hit Control Z or undo to get our lines back, and then start the fillet command back over. And notice that the radius went back to 0. So type R, 0.25, or 0.56, I'm sorry. And it's going to ask me for my first entity again. And we notice last time we clicked on the outside here, and the lines we cared about went away. So that's an important rule. When you're using the fillet command, always click the lines you care about. So we're going to click here, fillet command worked the way we wanted it to. Great. Alright, so next, let's hop back over to the drawing and see what's next. So let's go ahead and make this inside line here, and this line here, which is 1.6 apart from each other, or 0.8 away from the mirror line. So the front line will go to modify, offset, give it a 0.94 distance, click the front line and inside here, and then for the next one we'll hit O for offset and give it a 0.8. Move that up there. And then we'll start the fillet command. And the fillet here had a 0.25 radius. So we're going to start radius 0.25. Click the 2 lines we care about. And there we go. Alright. So next we have a 0.4 millimeter or 0.4 inch radius here. And a 2-inch radius here. Now, getting this radius will be a little complex because its center point is the center point here. But we'll go through a couple methods to get that. So first, let's get an offset line. 3.3 inches from the front line here. And then we'll do a circle, center point circle. And it's got a 0.4 inch radius. Alright. Now, one of the ways that we can do the 2-inch radius, since we know its center point originates from this circle on the other side down here, so we can click the center point of this circle and give it a 2-inch radius. And then we can click this circle and go to Modify, Mirror, and click this as the mirror point. Move it 180. So if we're here, perpendicular, we're back to where we were. If we move the mirror point 90 degrees, it brings it down here. And then down here in the command line, it's asking us if we want to delete our source entries. And in this case, yes, we do. Now we have our 2-inch radius. Now there's a couple other ways you could have done that. You could have gone ahead and mirrored this line down, 0.8 down, and then found this center point down here. But that was a lot of extra drawing that you didn't need to do. I like this method. It's quick, it's concise, and it used a couple commands that we haven't talked about yet. So for the next point, we need to find out where this intersect point is. So what we need to do is we need to offset our center line 0.6 up. So we'll go to Modify, Offset, Specify Distance 0.6, specify our source entity, move that up. And now we can cancel out of that, and now we can start cleaning up some of this geometry that we don't really need anymore. And what we're going to use for that is the trim command. Now, the trim command is the pair of scissors here on the icon bar, or modify, it's located down here at the bottom. Or if you just want to type it in, you can type TR or type out the full word trim. All will get you to the same place. Now, it'll ask you to specify cutting edges. And what this is you will specify a line, and when you click anything that intersects with that line, it'll cut that line and cut the object at that line. That works great, but we want to be a little quicker about things. So what we're going to do is hit enter one more time. And now it's going to ask me to specify segments to remove. And the way it works now is I can click a line, and anywhere there's an intersection, it'll delete the segment of line in between it. So I want to get rid of this line, and this line, and this one, and this one. And we'll go ahead and click that, and then that got rid of the circle all the way up to there. Okay. And now We'll get rid of the outside of this and clean up these edges. Clean up that edge. Those two. Alright. So you'll notice I left some lines behind that we didn't necessarily need, and that's because I didn't want to do all the clicking to get rid of them. And if you notice, if I use the trim command, if I click this line here, it'll get rid of that segment. But if I click this one, I can click it all day long and it won't do anything. And that's because there's nothing it's intersecting with. So now I can delete. Let's not delete the mirror line quite yet. I can delete that line, that line, that line. All gone. Alright, so we're getting close. It's starting to look like the latch plate. What do we have left? So now we have the 135-degree angle and the 15-degree angle left. And those are 15-degree angle is in line with the circles, and the 135-degree angle is 1.6 inches from the center line of these front circles. Okay? So let's put a couple infinity lines in. Let's put one in there. And then I'm going to just click a normal line segment. I will start it off. And I'm going to go ahead and use polar coordinates for this. So I'll type in @ and I just need a length that is longer than what I actually need, so I can trim out the excess. So I'll use 5. And then type less than. And since I'm moving down, I'm going to use a negative angle, and it's negative 15 degrees. And then we'll offset 1.6. Our infinity line. And then this line, we'll do the same thing. We'll say @ 5 less than. And since we're moving down, that 135 degrees turns into negative 45 degrees. Negative 45. And then we'll trim out the excess again. So trim, trim, and trim. All right. And then now we have half of our latch plate. So now what I'll do is I will just check my drawing, make sure we didn't miss anything. Everything's looking pretty good. And go to Modify, Mirror, highlight the latch plate, and I'm going to use the blue box so I don't end up with 2 center lines. Doesn't really matter, but I can. Hit Enter once I've specified all of my entities. And I'll pick the front point for the start of my mirror. And it's going to ask me to delete source entities. And this time I spent a lot of time on what I was drawing and I want to keep it, so it defaults to no, and I'm going to stick with that. So I'll just hit Enter and delete my mirror line, delete that line. Now I have a latch plate. That's all there is to it. Thanks, guys.